Hello and welcome back to Get Up and Game. My name is Josh, and in this video I'm very excited to be talking about the new DEADPOOL modular encounter set that was just announced for Marvel Champions the other day. Now, in order to talk about that though, we are going to have to go back and talk about the Deadpool hero that was also announced in that article, as well as the new fifth aspect that is being added to the game, the new pink aspect known simply as the pool aspect. So we'll have to run through all those cards, and then we'll finally be able to talk about DEADPOOL. But real quick, I want to talk about a dilemma that this article put me into. Now, if you watch my channel, you know that normally the way I like to do these Hero Pack announcements is I like to save my first impressions for the video. I don't look at the cards until I have a chance to sit down and record, and then I like to look at the cards on camera for the first time, because I think it's just fun to share that excitement at the cost of having anything profound or interesting to say about the cards. But I wasn't able to do that this time because I happened to be very busy on the day that it was announced. I was at a family sort of get-together barbecue. I grew up in a very small town, and we had our little festival this past weekend. So I was trying to take sneak peeks of the Deadpool cards in between taking bites of hot dogs and trying to keep my son out of the parade traffic. Now, good news on two fronts there. One, the hot dogs were delicious, and two, I did manage to keep my son from getting run over by the car that was carrying the second place finisher in the Walnut Grove Peanut Butter Fluff Princess Pageant. So better luck next year, Kayla. So close. But the point of all that is I have in fact seen all of the Deadpool cards already, so I didn't get to do the whole see the cards for the first time on camera thing, but I did manage to preserve my initial reaction upon first realizing exactly what was happening in the article, and I'll be able to share that with you here. So as you can see, I was very, very shocked and very, very excited about what seems to be happening with Deadpool. But one of the reasons it's so nice to be able to do those first impression videos is they are so easy to make. They take zero upfront preparation, because all I have to do here is get into this OBS program. I can pull up this screen right here, and then I can just scroll through the website and look at the cards and pull them up, and I can just talk about them. And it requires very little effort on my part. And even the editing afterwards is super easy, because all I have to do is cut out the minutes of silence in between every card while I'm trying to think of something clever to say about a card I've never seen before. But other than that, those are super easy to make. But I couldn't do that this time. So then when I'm not able to do a first impressions video, which is very easy to make, I instead like to make a little slideshow of the cards I've already seen, and I've prepared and I've thought ahead of time of some hopefully interesting things to talk about. And I've even written a very long script. Here's the script for the recent The Game Is Not Dead video. You can see it's pretty long, so you know that took some time to make. As well as I would come over here and I would make a whole bunch of slides. And let me tell you, making slides, that takes quite a bit of time, but they look really, really nice. They pop off the screen and everything looks really good. You just come up here, it's really easy. I make one of these, and then I might go over here, capture this, pop back over here. Wait, where'd it go? There it is. There we go. You can pop that right on there. Go over, let's make him a little bigger. There he is. Then maybe we'd throw some text on there. Slide that up. Oh yeah, that is gonna capture the attention of the viewer. Let's go ahead and make sure that goes into the proper font. That's what you wanna see. Oh yeah. So, you know, I would do that about 75 times. And you would have a really nice looking slideshow. And I could have done that for this one. And yes, the slides do look gorgeous the way I put them together. And do I sound way more smarter when I'm reading from a script? Sure. But do you want this video to come out today? Or do you want it to come out in like a week? Because those slideshow videos take a while. So instead, I have come up with a third option. Let me get this out of the way. I just marched right down to my local library. I printed out the images of the cards, and then I just went ahead and slid them in front of some cards that were just laying around, some old cards that I wasn't really making use of anyway. And so what we're going to be able to do is we're going to be able to talk about these cards. I'm going to be able to show them to you and actually do some play examples in a way that's much, much easier than making slides. So hopefully I can remember all the things I want to say since I didn't take the time to write a script. And so we are going to go through all of the DEADPOOL cards. We're going to go through all of the new pool cards, and we're going to take a look at the new DEADPOOL encounter set. So there's a lot of really cool things to talk about here. Let's get into it. So first off, of course, we'll go ahead and talk about the DEADPOOL hero card and what he looks like. He has 200 thwart, 200 attack, and 100 defense. So far and away, the strongest hero in the game. Of course, it's a joke. He has a little asterisk here that tells us to ignore these zeros. So as much as DEADPOOL would like to add to his stats, he's not able to. But that brings me to the first thing I wanted to talk about with DEADPOOL. It's really cool that all of the humor and goofiness of this character is contained to the art and the flavor text on the cards. Whereas with Spider-Ham, where there were many cards that wanted you to do very silly things, like say funny things out loud or, you know, stick your tongue out the bill and things like that. And I personally don't mind that stuff. I think it's fun, and you can also just completely ignore it. But with DEADPOOL, they didn't go that route. His cards are relatively straightforward, but there's a lot of really funny art and, you know, little things like this. So if you don't like that type of goofiness added to the cards, I don't think that will bother you with DEADPOOL because they kept it in a much simpler way. So he's 2 thwart, 2 attack, 1 defense, which 1 defense is low, but as you're going to see, he has no interest in defending whatsoever. He has the DEADPOOL core trait as well as X-Force, and his hero ability is the Regenerating Degenerate. He has a forced interrupt when you would be defeated. Instead, set your hit point dial to 1, change to alter ego form, and add 1 acceleration token to the main scheme. So as you can see, he basically cannot be killed in hero form. Anytime he would take lethal damage, he instead goes to alter ego, and you are going to be adding acceleration tokens to the main scheme, and you're going to want to keep a pile of these handy, as you're going to see. So right off the bat, that is an incredibly powerful ability, as he literally can't die. The only way you're going to lose with DEADPOOL, the vast majority of the time, because there are still ways for it to happen, but it's going to be rare, is by threat. But threat's going to be a real issue. You're going to need to keep an eye on that. So that's the hero power. He is a normal hand size of 6 and 5, and he's got 9 hit points. When we go to the alter ego, I think that's where things start getting really, really interesting. We'll flip him over. The first thing you're going to notice is he has an 8 recovery. That's insane. So when you flip over and you've set your hit point down to 1, you're going to be able to just immediately heal all the way back up to full. And then he does have the mercenary trait as well as the mutant trait. And there's a funny little asterisk there that sometimes he's a mutant, sometimes he's not. Just depends on who you ask, depends on which comic book it is. And his ability is break the 4th wall. As an action, he can discard a card from his hand to search your deck for a DEADPOOL event and add it to your hand. You can only do that once per round. This is bonkers powerful. Anytime any hero would be able to just go into their deck and pull one of their own hero cards directly into their hand, that's going to be great. And he has some insanely powerful events that he's going to be able to just search up and add to his hand. And he's going to have really good access to his alter ego, because every time you get knocked out, you're just going to immediately flip over, which, you know, when your turn starts, you're going to start your turn in alter ego, and you're going to be able to use this power. Now, they did limit the power to some degree that you have to discard a card from your hand, so this isn't an extra 7th card, but it's still really, really good. Now, there's a few elements about this that I want to talk about before we start looking at his cards. One, the fact that he is a mutant means he does have access to things like X gene, anything that can only be played if your identity has a mutant trait. He's going to be able to use these cards. Now, he's not X-Men, so he doesn't have access to all of the things that came out in the last wave, but he does have a few. The thing about X-Gene is I don't know if he's really going to want to use this particular card, because all of his events are either 0 or 1. He does have 1 that is 3, but for the most part, I don't know how much use you would get out of an X Gene just because he doesn't have that many expensive events. And he doesn't have any superpowers that we've seen. So Def Focus is out of play, where we've been using that with the mutants a lot. But one card I think you might get some really good use out of is Moira McTaggart, because there's a good chance you're going to be starting your turn in Alter Ego frequently if you keep getting knocked out. Now, obviously, if you keep doing that, you're going to be adding acceleration tokens to the main scheme, and that's going to become untenable very quickly. So not exactly sure how we're going to deal with this just yet. But if you are making use of this ability to just get knocked out and flip over, Moira's going to be there to draw you an extra card every time you flip back into hero form. So she might be somebody that you want to bring along. Another one that's going to be really, really good for Wade here is Weapon X. He's a mutant, so he can play it, and this is going to let you discard cards from your deck until you discard an identity-specific card. You know, his Alter Ego ability already tells you that he wants to be searching for his cards. He wants to be playing his cards. And Weapon X is going to be another one that's really going to help you access some of his very key, almost necessary upgrades that you're going to see as we look at the rest of his cards. Now, to go along with this Alter Ego ability that you're going to be able to search your deck for a Deadpool event, I think you might consider then bringing along the Mutant Education card, because he can play this in Alter Ego and it lets him shuffle his cards back into his deck. So you're going to want to make sure you have a steady supply of Deadpool's events. They are insanely strong, and this is going to let you get those cards back. And along with that, you're probably going to want an X-Mansion so that you get to draw a card off of that. And Wade is going to want the healing because he is going to be dealing damage to himself quite a bit, and you're going to want to be healing yourself. So not only will this play along with drawing a card with Mutant Education, but you're going to want the healing. Now, of course, he has the 8 recovery, so that heals him up to full. But Endurance, I think, is a card you're just definitely always going to include with Wade here. The higher you can get his health, the more powerful his events are going to be that you're going to see. And if you do get an Endurance down, you can get some work done with downtime, since your maximum hit points would be 12, so this would bump your recovery up to 10. That would be really, really, really strong. And you might even consider bringing along a card I almost never use, Recuperation. This is a card that just never seems to make it into any of my decks, but for 2 costs in Alter Ego, you can heal damage equal to your recovery. You know, without the downtime, it's 8. With the downtime, it's 10. That's a lot. That's a lot for only 2 resources. And then you don't have to exhaust Deadpool, so he'll be free to be ready when you go into hero form. So that's another good one. But of course, the big one you might be considering is Symbiote Suit. Getting that extra 10 health on Deadpool is going to do a lot of work once you see how his events work. And I just want you to keep this card in mind when we're talking about his events and what could be done with 10 extra hit points. He doesn't have any readying that we've seen, so maybe the plus stats won't be that big of a deal outside of aspect cards. And the extra hand size is always nice. And, you know, he's already going to be adding acceleration tokens to the main scheme, so what's an extra encounter card every round? What could possibly go wrong? So let's start looking at his cards now, and we can get a more of an idea of what Deadpool is trying to do besides make everybody's life miserable with all the extra acceleration tokens. Speaking of acceleration tokens, he has more than one way to get them. Not only can he be knocked out, he could also play the card Exhausting Personality, a 0-cost event. Keep in mind, he can always tutor for any events he wants when he's in Alter Ego. It looks like, based on the numbering, he only has 1 copy of this in his kit, but he can go get it with his ability, so you do have access to it. It's a hero action that lets you choose. You can either place an acceleration token on the main scheme, so yes, another one. That's going to let you stun and confuse the villain. So 0 cost, add an acceleration token, but you get a stun and a confuse. So I think this is actually going to make for a really good first turn play. You know, you can just go search it up with his action, make sure that you get it in your hand, and then you flip in a hero form and you can place an acceleration token. You're going to be getting these anyway, so you might as well just get one on the board right off the bat. And you get a stun and confuse to start the game. That's going to give you some really nice breathing room. You're probably going to find yourself back in your Alter Ego very soon, thanks to his hero power and the way some of his other cards work that we're going to see here shortly. And so having that confuse in place is going to be very important. You're going to be putting so much free threat on the main scheme, potentially with all his acceleration tokens. You do not want to let the villain scheme. So having that confuse, and then of course the stun, he wants to be spending his life for some of his other cards, so you don't want to be taking damage. Very similar to Wolverine. you want to be preventing him from taking damage from the villain, whether that's going to be through chump blocking or things like this, having some stun in his deck. I think this card is going to be a really, really good first turn play. But if you decide not to use it for that, you can also exhaust a player's identity. That player draws 1 card for each acceleration token on the main scheme. So later in the game, when maybe a stun and confuse isn't as necessary, or there are 3 or 4 or 5 acceleration tokens on the main scheme. Again, I'm not really sure how we're going to deal with that, but that seems to be what he's wanting to do. And somebody could draw quite a few cards, which would really probably just help you close out the game. So, but he does get some other benefits for having all these acceleration tokens. So let's look at a couple more cards. First off, he has this resource card called Montage. It has a wild resource to start, and then it says this card generates 1 additional wild resource for each acceleration token on the main scheme to a maximum of 3 additional resources. So if you do get 3 acceleration tokens on the main scheme, this could be worth 4 resources. And based on the numbering, he might have 2 of these in his kit. And so even if you only get the 1 acceleration token, which again, if you do this on the first turn, like I'm thinking I want to try, and you get that stun and confuse in the acceleration token, then this is already an extra double in his deck. And if he does have 2 of them, then great. Just by adding 1, you've already got extra doubles in your deck, which is nice. But this could be, 2, 3, even 4 resources for just 1 card. So as you're going to see, everything in his kit is crazy overpowered. He is super, super strong, but managing that threat is going to be a real persistent problem. In solo, it's going to get out of control very fast. In multiplayer, you might need to have 2 Justice players just to keep up with everything he's doing. But the thing is, what he's doing is so powerful that it might be worth having 2 Justice players at the table just to help him do what he wants to do. So that's one reason why you might want more acceleration tokens. And the other one is, of course, he has Cable as his signature ally, 3 cost, as a psionic and X-Force traits, 3 health. And he has 1 thwart and 2 attack, 1 consequential on each, but he gets +1 thwart and +1 attack for each acceleration token on the main scheme, again, to a maximum of +3/+3. So if you do get 3 acceleration tokens on the main scheme, he is thwarting for 4 and attacking for 5. So it looks like that's sort of the target you're looking at. You're trying to get 3 acceleration tokens. That's going to max out Montage. It's going to max out Cable. And it would get you 3 extra cards from exhausting personality. So those are all really, really nice numbers if you do get up to 3. But here, again, even if you only have 1 on there, for 3 cost, you have a 2 thwart, 3 attack ally with 3 health. And you don't necessarily need to be chump blocking if you are just going to take the hit and get knocked out and flip over. So Cable could easily be using his 3 activations. You're probably going to want to be bringing healing. So if you're playing in protection, you could do the med teams or even just bring first aids from basic just to keep Cable on the table, because he's going to be hitting and thwarting so well. And you might just want to be using that 2, 3, 4 thwart that he's going to have just to keep the main scheme under control. So he's an absolutely stellar signature ally. Again, even if you don't get a ton of acceleration tokens, even just 1, he is at least as good as among the best allies in the game with a stat of 2 and 3. But once you get even more acceleration tokens on there, he just gets even better. So Cable is awesome. So they do give you reasons and benefits for wanting those acceleration tokens. And they do give us 1 card that we've seen so far that's going to help us to deal with them. And that is this 1 cost upgrade. It ain't over. Based on the numbering, it looks like he only has 1 of these, but it is a condition that attaches to the main scheme, and it increases the target threat value of attached scheme by 2 for each acceleration token on it. So you're playing Rhino, and it goes up to 7, but if you have this on there, and for each acceleration, so now it goes up to 9, and then you get another one up there, it goes up to 11. So this does kind of help you keep pace, because the thing Deadpool is going to wanting to be doing, or everybody that's playing with Deadpool, is it's going to be all about burst thwarting. You're going to be adding 2, 3, 4 threat to the main scheme, depending on the player count. But just for the sake of discussion, say solo, and you're adding 3 threat to the main scheme at step 1. You can go ahead and bring those big thwart cards. Your 4 Justices, your Crisis Averteds, the ones that take off big chunks of threat. And then this is going to allow there to be enough room on the main scheme to let that threat accumulate, and then you can burst it back down. Now, obviously, if you're playing somebody like Ultron with that first main scheme only goes up to 3, even with this, you're probably not going to be able to hold on to it. But against a lot of the villains, this is going to be so key and necessary to keeping Deadpool in the game long enough to get the job done, because you're only adding 1 threat per turn with the acceleration token. But this is giving you 2 more threshold, so this is helping you keep pace and giving you time to play those big thwart cards. But he only has 1 of these, so you're going to need to mulligan hard for this. This is definitely a first turn play if you can find it. And so get this on the table as quickly as you can. Now, I've talked a lot about trying to manage the threat and trying to maintain the scheme and trying not to lose from all the acceleration tokens. But actually, in all reality, at least in solo, I actually don't think you're going to care that much about trying to do that, because Deadpool can kill the villain in just about 2 turns, if not 1, with some very good draws, because he has cards like Maximum Effort. This is a 0-cost event that, again, could be tutored in your alter ego if you want to. Add this to your hand. It says hero action attack. Take any amount of damage up to your remaining hit points. So you could take all of your health left, and then you deal an equal amount of damage to an enemy. So on the first turn, if you wanted to, you could put this in your hand with his alter ego power, change to hero, and then just take 9 damage and deal 9 damage to the villain, except that won't kill you. You'll just flip back over and you'll be at 1. You can heal right back up if you want to. So if you attack and then play this, that's 11 damage straight up. But, you know, if you grabbed some of the cards we already talked about, like if you played Endurance on the first turn and then you flip up, now you've got 12 health that you could spend, so you could easily do 14 damage. And if you did play the Symbiote Suit on the first turn, you know, you drew a couple doubles, you got this in your hand, got this down, and then flipped over and did Maximum Effort, you could do up to 19 damage with just this card. Suddenly those acceleration tokens don't seem like such a big deal, considering he can just knock out stage 1 of the villain with just this card alone. But it doesn't stop there, because he also has this card is Fire. This is a 3-cost event. It's an attack, forced response. After your turn ends, if this card is in your hand, take 1 damage. So if you get this in your hand and decide not to play it, but you want to hold on to it, it is going to damage you for 1. That sounds bad, but you actually might want to do that, because the other part of the card is hero action attack. Deal X damage to an enemy. X is the amount of damage you have sustained. Now that might sound familiar because it's an awful lot like Gamma Slam. In fact, it does the exact same thing for 1 cost less, and it's not limited to only doing 15 damage. So again, with a Symbiote Suit, you could have up to 19 health, throw the Endurance in there, and you're up to 22. So you could have sustained up to 21 damage, and that is the amount of damage that this card could do. So you hit the villain with this first, spending yourself down to 1 life for 8 damage, 11 damage, 18 damage. And then you go ahead and play this, and you do the same amount of damage again. So you could easily kill the villain with just an okay draw of getting Symbiote Suit. Now, this is an expensive card, so getting this on the first turn and getting in play and getting these out, that's not going to happen a lot, but it could happen. And so at least in solo, that's a lot of villains that could easily be knocked out in just the first few turns of the game. So Deadpool is all about the rush. He is not hanging around playing control. He's not looking to build up a huge board and get all these cool things out and take his time, because he just doesn't work. He doesn't want to. He wants to be adding acceleration tokens to the main scheme to power up everything that he's got going on. And so you're going to be playing heavy rush most of the time. Now, similar to how Star-Lord works, you don't necessarily have to lean into that power. You could use this more as a fail-safe, where you try not to get knocked out, but if you do, you know, maybe you can play a little riskier, or just, you know, once in a while you take that big hit to the face just because you know you won't lose, but you don't have to lean into it super hard. And then, you know, these cards could just be, you know, do medium amounts of damage. For 0, maybe you take 4 or 5 damage, and, you know, you knock out a minion or you deal some damage to the villain. I don't know. I think this is one of those heroes we're going to have to play. It feels like it really wants you to go all out, but I'm hoping for my particular playstyle that you can get away with not just trying to win the game in 2 turns every time. It's going to be fun to do that sometimes, but I would like to hang around and actually get some of his cards in play and do some of the cool things that he wants to do. Certainly in solo, you're going to be able to just kill the villain very, very, very quickly. Based on the numbering, he might have 3 copies of these, and he might have 2 of these. So you're going to have access to this level of damage pretty regularly. But in multiplayer, even doing, these massive amounts of damage, it's going to take a little time to set that up. You're going to have to manage the board to some degree, but he's still going to be able to just burst the villain down so strongly. But you're definitely going to want to be building up his health. If you don't want to use a symbiote suit, it is risky, at least endurance. This could be doing 11 damage for, again, 0 resources. It's so easy to heal back up. It's nuts. It is nuts. I almost wonder if this is more meant to be a meme than an actual hero. Like, it's just crazy the things you're going to be able to do with them. And it's so unlike every other hero. So that's kind of his big shtick, is getting, I think a lot of health and then using that to do massive amounts of damage. And the thing that's interesting about this card, like with Gamma Slam and She-Hulk, you might draw that and you've taken some amount of damage, 5, 6, whatever, but she still has plenty of health left. You might just want to hold that card in your hand, take that next villain attack to the face, and then, play it on the next turn after you've gotten beat up even more, and then Gamma Slam is really going to hit hard. This one does the job for you, where if you do hold on to it, it's going to deal you a damage. It's going to tick you down that little bit more and help you to get a really big hit with it next turn. So I think that's kind of what that's for. I don't think this is actually meant to punish you for holding on to it. I think it's actually helping you get to the amount of sustained damage that you're looking for. So that's how the big damage stuff works. Now, he does have a few other things, so if the game does last more than a couple turns, you can do some fun things with him. He has a thwart card that is similar to his attack in that you take any amount of damage up to your remaining hit points, and then you remove an equal amount of threat from a scheme. So if you are in danger of losing, you've rushed things down, you've gotten a couple acceleration tokens on the main scheme already, and you just need to hold on for another turn or two. You do have this to burst the threat down. Hopefully you've added the it ain't over to the main scheme, so there's room for all that threat, and then this can just take a lot down at the cost of life. This is going to help you in multiplayer to repair some of the damage you have done to the table, and just say, I'm going to take 9 damage, I'll remove 9 of the threat that I probably put there myself, and that's going to help you keep the game going for a little bit longer. He hopefully has 2 of these, it looks like. So these could be very nice to keep you in the game as long as it takes. And while he doesn't have any super crazy weird things like what Spider-Ham has, as far as like the goofiness, he does have one really crazy breaking the fourth wall type thing with Armed to the Teeth. This upgrade is cost 2. It says response, after you play Armed to the Teeth, search your collection, meaning all the cards you own that aren't currently in your deck, for 1 weapon upgrade from any aspect and attach it face down here. So it has to be from an aspect, can't be from a hero kit, but it can be from any aspect, even one that you're not currently playing. And as an action, you can exhaust this to swap the card attached here with a weapon upgrade you control. So say, for example, you have already played the last card we have seen of his, Deadpool's Katana, 2 cost upgrades, restricted. He probably has 2 of these. It says hero action attack, you can exhaust this and take a damage and deal 2 damage to an enemy, and this attack gains piercing. So you get this on the board, and just like everything else in his kit, it's going to deal a damage to him. And then you can just hit an enemy for 2 with piercing. That is really nice. Anytime, if you've played Ironheart, if you played Iron Man, War Machine, you get these upgrades on the board that can just deal damage wherever you want them to. It's really, really nice. It is an attack, so this would clear a stun if you needed it to. And the taking of a damage it's a blessing and a curse, because that's less damage you're going to be able to do with maximum effort or threat removal with Yoo-Hoo, but that's more damage you can do with this card as fire. So it kind of his health is going to be a bit of a balancing act, I think, just depending on what you're wanting to do next. So taking the damage might not be always great, or maybe it's fine. And access to piercing on the table. Tough is not going to be Deadpool's friend. He wants to do these big, massive amounts of damage. And so being able to get a tough out of the way is going to be huge for him, and just being able to burst things down. So what you can do then, you get Deadpool out, you get the Katana out, and then you play Armed to the Teeth, and then you could, for example, grab a sonic rifle, just tuck that under there, And then after you use the katana to do some damage, you can just exhaust this, swap them around, bring this out. You know, this is going to have its 2 counters. Go ahead and confuse the villain. Next turn comes around, everything's ready. You just swap them right back. And then now you've got your katana to use again. When this comes back out, you know, actually I should be putting this face down, because then again on the next turn, you ready up, you flip this back out, it's going to be fully stocked up again, because when it goes face down, it leaves play, it's removed from the game. So when you bring it back into play, it's going to be fully loaded every time. So by playing this, you're going to easily be able to confuse the villain every other turn, which you're really going to want, because again, you're probably going to be spending a lot of time in Alter Ego, or at least wanting to flip down when you can and recover, and you do not want the villain scheming. So, you know, disclaimer, as always, steady stalwart doesn't work so well, but I think a lot of the times Sonic Rifle is going to be a good target for that. And even if you don't get the katana out, you could just have a Sonic Rifle in play and then just keep swapping it with the other one, you know, if you wanted to go that route. Hand cannon is another really good potential target, where you could just be attacking for a lot with overkill, swapping that with the katana. That'd be really nice to use the piercing, you know, to maybe take the tough off of a minion and then swap it with a hand cannon and then attack for 4 with overkill. So this is just going to provide a lot of fun. And this card alone is one of the reasons why I hope we're not just killing the villain in 2 turns every game with Deadpool, because I want to have time to play with cards like this. But in order to do this, to have the fun of swapping back and forth over the course of multiple turns, you probably can't go too crazy with the acceleration tokens, because you're just not going to be able to keep up with it. You know, even if you're playing Injustice and you're just going all out on threat removal, and maybe that's just how it works. You know, his kit alone is going to deal all the damage, so maybe you just pack his deck full of threat removal, but you're really only going to be able to do that in Justice. Again, talking solo, you know, multiplayer, like I said earlier, you might just need more than one Justice player. But, you know, you could play that way and then keep you know, playing around with fun things like this and not just trying to win super duper fast. So those are all the cards we've seen from Deadpool's kit. Based on the numbering, it's theoretically possible that we've seen all of them, but there's probably at least a couple that we haven't seen yet. But we have definitely the general idea of how he's going to work. Again, you can either just go super fast, and it can be pretty consistent, considering you can grab, you know, one of the key events that you might be missing with his alter ego power and just go straight for the villain. Or what I'm hoping for is that you can sort of not go too crazy on adding these acceleration tokens. You know, get one on there for sure to power up Cable a little bit, to power up Montage into at least a double resource. I really do like the idea of playing that Stun and Confuse right off the bat and getting just that one on there to get going. But then maybe try to be a little more careful from there, and then you could lean into it right at the end and just go crazy. Because for me personally, you know, every hero in this game exists on a spectrum from control to damage. And I definitely prefer the control side of things, which is why I like Venom quite a bit more than Wolverine. And Deadpool is definitely on the Wolverine side. It's very similar in a lot of ways, using your health to deal damage. But Wolverine actually comes with a decent amount of control. He's not a bad thwarter. And Deadpool can thwart for 2, and he does have that one very bursty threat removal card. But beyond that, it's just all damage. And for me, I'm not usually as into those heroes. I like to take my time. I like to set up a big board of upgrades and stuff, and I like to stun and confuse. I think that's fun. So I am very excited to play Deadpool, but for me personally, I don't know that he will end up being one of my favorite heroes, but we're going to see how that plays out. But that's not all that Deadpool comes with. There is also these pink cards. This is a brand new aspect that is being added to the game. These are cards that any hero can choose to use. Instead of using aggression, justice, leadership, or protection, you could play the pool aspect, and then you would include these and basic cards. And of course, if you're playing Spider-Woman, this can be one of your 2. If you're playing Adam Warlock, you can use these cards. It replaces one of the 4, and there is no power on his, you know, hero card that deals with these, so you would just be choosing to use these instead of something that would give him a benefit. But, you know, these work just like every other deck building card, And so what they're doing is they're including a ton of these in the pack. This is basically a scenario pack and not just a hero pack, because we're getting the pack overall, I think, is 78 cards. And I believe somebody did the math, and there's going to be about 47 of these in the pack. So there will be a lot of one-ofs like the allies and unique cards, but there are going to be some, events and such that you're going to get 3 copies of. And so you're going to have access to a whole new pile of cards that you're going to be able to build with. It won't be quite as fully fleshed out as the other aspects, but I think there's going to be enough that you're going to have some options for how you want to build with the pool aspect. And so we're going to take a look at these and see. They definitely have their own flavor, and they are very Deadpool-y. Like, they probably want you to play these with Deadpool, but some heroes are going to make really good use of these as well. So let's just start going through them. We have these crazy allies, and one of the things about the allies is they don't have consequential damage. The article calls out that they don't care about that type of thing. So they are automatically very strong because they can just stay on the board. So we have Dogpool here, 3 cost, 0 thwart, 1 attack, so terrible stats, but again, he can just stay on the board the whole game, pinging away for 1, 4 health for when you want to block with him. He has Retaliate 1 and Toughness, so he makes for a pretty solid blocker if you can keep him alive, and when he's defeated, he deals an additional damage to an enemy, which will make up for the fact that he doesn't deal Retaliate on the turn he's defeated, but he has an acceleration icon on there, so that's just one more threat being added to the board every single turn this thing is in play. So is the power level worth it? You're really going to have to decide, and that's how a lot of these cards are, is they're asking you to do some pretty dangerous, risky things in order to make use of them. So a lot of fun. Power level is going to be, interesting to see. So then we have Headpool, another ally, another 3 cost. This one has 2 thwart and 1 attack, so we're definitely going to want him around. It's 2 thwart every single turn that you can make use of. He only has 1 health, so, a lot of things can kill him, but he is a zombie, which is fun. These are all Deadpool core, I should say, which Deadpool also is, so team building exercise could help pay for these. I'm assuming most, if not all, of the pool allies will end up having that trait, so team building could help get him down. And then this one has a response after he attacks and damages a minion. That minion attacks another enemy of your choice. So he's only attacking for 1, but then if you hit a minion that has 2 health, then he's going to turn around and do 2 more damage to something. So very, very cool. But I suspect you're going to be wanting to thwart with him a lot. Now this one has the Amplify icon, which in my experience actually isn't that bad most of the time. The acceleration, that's just going to happen every turn. You're going to get that extra threat. That's not great. Amplify, a lot of times when the villain is attacking, you're either blocking with an ally or you have some sort of plan. So that extra 1 attack will often not make a difference. Now, not always. If you're taking the attack to the face, you don't have a blocker or any kind of defense, then yeah, that's not great. And especially when they scheme, that's very bad. That +1 scheme, there's, nothing you can really do when they scheme most of the time. So, but I do think the Amplify isn't going to be that hard to live with to get 2 extra thwart every single turn. Now, of course, you only have room for 3 allies. So, these guys are going to take up space, and they're going to be adding these icons to the board. But I think I think this one's pretty good. Now, speaking of adding icons to the board, here's this player side scheme for 0 cost called Live Dangerously. It has victory 0 because, of course, when it leaves play, it goes to the victory display. And most of the player side schemes do something beneficial for you when they leave play. You want to complete them so that then you get some sort of bonus, like putting an ally into play for free or going and getting an upgrade, things like that. This one gives you the bonus while it's in play. Each identity gets +2 hand size. So this is the same thing as that Mysterio one, Fool's Paradise. But this one is way worse than that one because this has all the icons. That one doesn't have the Amplify icon. This one has a Crisis, an Acceleration, an Amplify, and a Hazard. So for keeping this in play, you are getting a +2 hand size for the whole table. But you can't remove threat from the main scheme. You're adding yet another threat to the main scheme. You are boosting the villain basically by +1/+1. And then you're getting an extra encounter card every turn. Live dangerously indeed. I don't know, because you got to have this in play for at least 1 turn to have gotten something from it. You don't play this if you don't want to get that +2 hand size, probably. And then it's going to be 3 threat per player to get rid of it if you decide you don't want this in play anymore, which you're probably going to need to get rid of this at some point because that Crisis, unless you're just running a lot of things like Crisis Averted or whatever is going to work to get around Crisis, you're going to have to get rid of this at some point. And you're just dealing with a lot of extra stuff until then. But I think the big flavor here is just fun. Like, you are living dangerously. Let's just throw this out there. Let's see if we can manage it. You're not going to do this all the time, but it would be really fun to have a game where you do try to lean into this and you take advantage of that +2 hand size, and then you just figure out a way to work around all this other stuff. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. But the aspect does give you some things to benefit from having all these icons in play. So it's definitely a major theme. Here we see the zero cost event, barely a scratch. And many of us, of course, are very excited by this picture. This is a reference to the Monty Python Holy Grail movie. So funny. This is the kind of stuff that you expect from Deadpool. This is a defense event, Hero Interrupt Defense. When you would take any amount of damage from an attack, prevent one of that damage for each Crisis, Acceleration, Amplify, and Hazard icon in play. So if you do have this thing out, and if you're playing with this, then you're probably playing with this, then this prevents 4 damage just for having this in play for 0 cost. That is exceptionally good. This is basically a backflip. Backflip prevents all the damage, but this is going to be pretty close if this is in play. So this is one of the things that's going to help deal with this, at least for the person playing with the pool cards. Everybody else is all going to have to put up with all this other stuff. But you could be preventing, up to 4 damage, but it's for each one. So even if you have, head pool and dog pool in play as well, you're adding all the icons. So this would be 6 at this point. So this could easily prevent all the damage from an attack, if you're set up for it, which, you don't even need this in play. If you're playing, 3 or 4 player game, you're probably getting side schemes in play that have these types of icons. So this is probably just naturally going to do a couple things. And if you are playing with these cards, you might consider, not clearing side schemes that aren't giving you too much trouble so you can get these kind of benefits. But in solo, I think you're probably going to need to get this in play to make any use of this, because you can't be having side schemes just hang around, especially Crisis and Hazards. So, but you could throw this out there, get a couple extra cards, then use this to prevent a bunch of damage. Maybe you put up with it for a couple turns to get the benefit, because you might also want to be playing I got this 1 cost event. You're going to be able to have 3 of these. You're going to be able to have 3 of these. I assume they're going to give us 3 copies of each. These aren't unique or max 1 per play or anything. This one is really cool. 1 cost event, hero action. If the following icons are on 1 or more cards in play, and that's very important. This one counts the total number of icons, period, doesn't matter. This one, even if there's multiples of each icon in play, you're only going to be able to do each one of these things once. But if there's a crisis, you can deal 3 damage to an enemy. So already for 3, that's a pretty good card on its own. If there's an acceleration, you can remove 2 threat from a scheme. That's at least tracks as far as the resources. You remove 2 threat for 2 effective resources. That's not bad. It's not great, but if there's an amplify, you get to ready an ally you control. Okay, this is a little expensive for that. Get ready is free. So a 1 cost event to ready an ally isn't necessarily worth it. Depending on the ally, if it's cable and you're attacking for 5, it's probably worth it. And if there's a hazard in play, you get to draw a card. Again, 2 effective resources, draw 1 card, not great. But what you're hoping for, of course, is to be able to hit all of them, or at least multiples of them. Again, this doesn't necessarily have to be in play. Just regular side schemes will contribute to this. But if you get this out there, there are benefits. So you play this and you've got 3 of these in your deck, this might do a ton of work for you. And you're drawing 2 extra cards, which means you're going to be able to get it into your hand faster. So for 1, dealing 3 damage to an enemy, removing 2 threat from a scheme, readying an ally you control, and drawing a card, that makes this the best card in the game, I would think. I don't think there's any other card that does that much work for a 1 cost, again, at the cost of having to deal with all this stuff. So, and that 2 threat isn't coming off the main scheme because this is a crisis. So you got to be careful with that. But it's just cool. It's just cool. Again, you're probably not going to want to do this all the time, but it's just fun. It's really neat, and it's really different. So that's how all that stuff works. There's a few other really neat ones in here. There's Healing Factor, 3 cost upgrade. This is the kind of stuff I'm super excited about. That there's some really powerful cards here that aren't absolutely wild and crazy like this. There's just some really cool stuff you can play with. And if we get enough of them in the pack, there's enough different ones. You don't necessarily have to play with this element of the pool aspect if you don't want to. There are other really cool things you could be using instead if you don't like the risk reward. So I think they did a good job looking at the rest of these, of trying to appeal to everyone. Like, not everybody likes Star-Lord and Scarlet Witch and that risk reward gameplay. And so a lot of this wouldn't appeal to them, I don't think. But there are other things here that I think will still appeal to every kind of player. And so this one, the 3 cost Healing Factor Superpower, you can only have 1 per player, but they'll probably still give you 3 because it's not unique. Has a response after the player phase begins. Exhaust this to heal 2 damage from your identity. So you just get Wolverine's power. Now it's a 3-cost upgrade. It's expensive, but if you can get this out, superpower, Death Focus will help pay for it. This is really, really, really powerful. Like, you're not going to find this in another aspect. That's really good. So that is going to be a fun one to make use of. This one is hilarious. It's another one of those that does kind of break the fourth wall, verging on the spider ham kind of things, but still not quite so silly. 2-cost upgrade, Get Good. It is unique, and it says to reduce the cost to play Get Good by 2 if you did not win your previous game of Marvel Champions. So very silly. But so you're going to want to start keeping track of wins and losses, because if you did lose, this is going to help you win the next one. You're just going to be free if you lost your last game. And it's forced to interrupt when a player would be defeated. They set their hit point dial to 1 and change to alter ego form instead. And then you remove this card from the game. So this gives you Deadpool's hero power, again, for free if you lost your last game, because apparently you're not good and you need the help, which is hilarious. That's an incredibly powerful effect. There's a lot of heroes like Wolverine, Drax, Phoenix. They have cards that do this similar thing that's going to keep you alive. And we don't usually play them because they're so expensive. You could get this for 0, but even for 2, this is, cheaper than I Got Better and things like that. Now, it only sets you to 1, so you're still very much in danger. And if you're not playing Deadpool, which if you were playing Deadpool, you're not going to be using this card. But, most heroes don't have a recovery of 8. So, but this will still keep you from losing, which will keep you in the game and hopefully allow you to get the win. So really, really, really strong, even for 2, but especially for 0. But my absolute favorite element of Pool, and I hope there's a few more of these, is we have 3 cards that are essentially reprints of core set cards that could have been a little bit stronger. So here we have the 0-cost event. Instead of Get Ready, it's Get Ragey. And it says action, ready an ally, and then it adds the text. That ally gets +1 attack until the end of the phase. But you can only have 1. So, you can't fill your deck with these, but getting a ready and +1 attack is just that little bit better than Getting Ready. Get Ready is already a pretty decent card, making use of an ally a second time. They are going to take their consequential damage a second time, unless you're playing, of course, with these guys who don't take consequential damage. So there might be some really good Pool allies that you make multiple uses of, and they're not going to take consequential damage. So that would make this card even better, though of course you only get the 1. But still, such a fun theme for these. There is the 0-cost event. Instead of Great Responsibility, it is Not My Responsibility, and it loses the hero portion of the hero interrupt that's on Great Responsibility, which is amazing, because that's the biggest problem with that card, is you have to play in hero form. When any amount of threat would be placed on a scheme, you or your ally takes it as damage instead. So this will allow you to actually prevent a villain scheming. If you're in alter ego, you could play this when the villain schemes, and you could either take the damage yourself or throw it all on an ally to eat all that threat. This one definitely needs to be max 1 per deck, because that is incredibly strong. There are very few cards in the game that can just prevent all the threat that is going on in the scheme from the villain scheming. So here, this one gives you way more options than Great Responsibility did. The card is practically unplayable in solo because you have to play it in hero form, and so unless the villain gets an advance or something, it's still okay in multiplayer because another player might pull a scheme or might be an alter ego, and then you can play it. But here, this just gets a lot more work done. Plus, you can put all the damage on an ally, which is really nice. Well, it's not very nice, but it's very helpful. And then here we get the 3-cost improvement over Uppercut. This one is called Cut Upper. And it is the same thing, deal 5 damage to an enemy, but it also adds a stun. So, Uppercut definitely comes in under the curve. For 3 cost, you're only dealing 5 damage. It's nice that it can go on the villain or and a minion, but still, it's just so expensive for what it does. Here, at least you're getting a stun. So you're getting 1 stun in the Pool aspect. We don't know if we're getting many more. So I feel like you're likely going to include these, depending on how many cards we get that you're going to want to do various deck building with. These max 1 per decks are so cool, and they're so good that I think you're going to see these in most decks using the Pool aspect. You can't really build around them, but they're just so good that you might as well use them most of the time. So I've seen a lot of mixed opinions about this aspect. Is it really going to be something we're going to be using a lot of? I don't know. I haven't put a ton of thought into thinking like who these would be good for necessarily. Some cards are obviously very strong for certain heroes, But just in general, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. You know, just cable pull this on the first turn with his setup power. You know, there are just fun things that you're going to be able to. I actually really excited about this. I got this card. I definitely want to play that because you could, if you're cable, you throw this out there and then, you know, that's in play from the beginning. I don't know if it's good, but again, it's fun. The Deadpool flavor is definitely not for everyone, and that's clearly how these cards are themed. And we don't know if we're going to see any more of these because they're not likely to start including them in the backs of packs because not everybody's going to be buying Deadpool. But on that note, I think this is a marketing just genius move that they did add this aspect in the back of Deadpool, because while Deadpool is incredibly popular and a lot of people really do like him, so a lot of people are going to buy the pack anyway, for as many people that like Deadpool, there's probably close to as many people that kind of hate him. And I'm sort of in the middle. I do think he's fine most of the time, but he gets a little bit much for me certain times. But even the people who hate Deadpool, they're probably going to want these new deck building cards because there's going to be so many options. And it just adds such a new way to play the game that I think from a marketing standpoint is just genius. All the people who are going to skip Deadpool are at least a little less likely to skip him now because they're going to want these cards. So that's pretty clever, I think. So that is all the Deadpool cards. That is all the pool aspect cards. Just so cool, so much value. The pack does cost a little bit more as a result of this. It's like $5 more, $4 more, something like that. So not too bad, but it's a little bit more. But there's one more thing that got added in this pack that I mentioned at the beginning. We have this Dreadpool. Now I called it a modular encounter set, and it technically is, in the sense that, you know, it has the Dreadpool name here and it is a 7-card encounter set. But the way this works is if you are using the pool aspect, if at least one player at the table is playing with the pink cards in their deck, you include this Crisis of Infinite Deadpools card in the encounter deck from setup. And as a huge DC Comics fan and a huge fan of Crisis on Infinite Earths, this is absolutely hilarious to me. I mean, breaking the fourth wall by mentioning a DC property is a pretty big, funny thing that Deadpool would do. So you have this in the encounter deck if anybody's playing with the pink cards. And if it comes out, it's pretty much Shadow of the Past. When revealed, reveal a set-aside Dreadpool minion and Dreadful Deeds side scheme. So it's similar to having a Nemesis and a Nemesis side scheme, of course. Shuffle the rest of the set-aside Dreadpool encounter set into the encounter deck and remove this card from the game. So if you're playing with the pink cards, which do seem pretty strong, you're adding this extra element of risk, similar to, you know, if you're playing Phoenix and you might get the Dark Phoenix. If anybody wants to play with the pink cards, fine, but people might have to put up with this. So what is this going to bring into play? Well, first we have the Dreadpool minion. It is a 2-scheme, 2-attack, 3 health, so it doesn't sound that bad. He engages the first player, so he's going to move around while he's in play. And when you defeat him, you deal Dreadpool to the player who defeated him as a face-down encounter card. So you can kill him, but then he just turns around and comes right back. So defeating him is worthwhile because then at least he won't attack you again or attack the first player or scheme. But he's just going to keep coming back over and over and over. Once he enters the game, it's almost impossible to get rid of him, which is absolutely hilarious. And it's a little scary. That adds legitimate risk to using the pool cards. This guy is going to be a nuisance. 2-attack, 2-scheme, not the worst thing ever. You're going to be able to deal with it, but it's just one more thing that you have to put up with. And so I think this is absolutely awesome. And even though it is meant to be included or is required to be included with the pool cards, I do think you could just treat this as a modular encounter set. You know, if you really wanted to, you know, maybe you wouldn't use the Crisis card because he wouldn't be set aside. You just chuck these guys in and play with them as an encounter set. I think that would be really fine. So, but that's him. He also adds 3 boost icons to the deck. Not great. And then he brings the side scheme, Dreadful Deeds. This one is surprisingly tame. When revealed, place 2 threat here for each player who controls 1 or more pool pink cards. So if you have any of the pink cards in play, then this comes out and is going to have some extra threat. And it just has the amplify icon. And I talked earlier, I don't think the amplify icon is that big of a deal. It's not great. I'm not saying it's helpful or anything, but I don't think this is really that big of a priority most of the time. And if you don't even have any of the cards in play, you know, it's not punishing you for having them in your deck. It's just for having them in play, though you're probably going to have some of the allies in play since they stick around and some of the upgrades are pretty good. So this one's not bad. Dreadpool is a huge pain, just such a nuisance. But I think this card is not that bad, though it does add 3 more boost icons, so that's never great. Probably the coolest card in the whole thing, I think, is this anti-regeneration ray attachment. So this comes out and it says attached to Dreadpool, otherwise attached to the villain. And it's going to give +1 attack. And then it has the force to interrupt. When attached character attacks a non-villain character, treat the attacked character's text box as if it were blank except for traits until the end of the attack. So what this is basically saying is this is attached and they attack Deadpool, then you treat the attacked character's text box as if it were blank until the end of the attack, meaning you would erase the regenerate and degenerate ability and Deadpool could die. So that's why this is here, because it could blank Deadpool's text box and kill him. Against most heroes, this isn't going to make that big of a difference. But what's so cool about this is it also says, as a hero action, you can spend 1 of each resource to attach this card to your identity. So you can steal this and put it on your hero, and then you can get rid of Dreadpool. You can blank Dreadpool's text, and if you attack him, you would blank his text and you would kill him, and he would go away. Or at least he would go to the discard pile until you loop around again. But so this is just such a neat way built into the encounter set. It does give you a way to potentially deal with Dreadpool if it does come out and get attached, and you have to spend a lot to steal it. But it's just such a neat idea, and it is funny that it is designed specifically to kill Deadpool as well. So I'm just such a big fan of these cards in this set. I think this is so just different and interesting and fun. And then the last card, something we've seen before, this is called Poolized, where when it's revealed, attach the ally with the highest cost without a Poolized attached, otherwise it just surges. And then you treat the attached ally as a pool minion with a blank text box. Attached minion schemes equal to its thwart and does not take consequential damage. So this is going to come out and it's going to steal your allies. We've seen cards like this in other encounter sets. So it's not great. Losing your allies and then suddenly finding yourself facing with a minion is very bad, especially if you're playing, expensive, powerful allies. Now, it does blank their text box, so if this were to, say, steal Cable, he wouldn't suddenly be a 4-threat, 5-attack minion. But still, never good to lose an ally and gain a minion at the same time. And based on the numbering, this might be the rest of the encounter set. There could potentially be 3 of these, and so maybe it's these 3 and then 3 of these, or there might be some other cards we haven't seen yet. We don't know. So, but that's how the Dreadpool stuff works. And I'm just blown away. I'm blown away from top to bottom. I said maybe I don't love Deadpool forever as one of my favorite heroes. I don't know. I have to play him. But the creativity on display here, the capturing of his theme, the way that he is incredibly powerful, impossible to kill, but also is going to make the game much harder for everyone. That's like taking his annoying personality that drives everybody crazy and translating it into a game mechanism. It's like he won't stop talking, he won't shut up, but instead of irritating everyone, it's adding extra threat to the main scheme. It's amazing. There was so much speculation about how Deadpool was going to work, and I think people were pretty close on a lot of the mechanisms. The idea that he can't die, I definitely saw a lot of people thinking that, and we saw his ally that's coming with Cable, and so we knew that that's how he works. Every time he dies, instead you can take an acceleration token to keep him in play. And frequently when you see characters as allies and heroes, they do have very similar mechanisms. So that was a big clue. And so the suspicion that that's how the hero is going to work, very on point. But the whole adding of a brand new aspect thing, I didn't hear anybody predicting that. That is just so crazy that they would go this far. There was always meant to be 5 aspects in the game, and then one of them ended up getting cut before the core set came out. If you've never heard about that, there was going to be a determination aspect. That's why there are 5 heroes, but only 4 aspects. There were going to be 5 aspects, but in the end, they just decided it diluted the card pool too much, so some of those cards just found their way into the normal card pool. But here we do get that 5th aspect. Will it get supported in the future? If they make, I don't know much about Deadpool in the comics. I know there's a character called Gwenpool. I think there's a Lady Deathpool. Or a Deadpool rather. So if we do get more pool heroes occasionally, I can see them coming with more. And that would be a really good incentive to buy those because, I'm going to buy everything for the game because, it's my favorite game and I want everything. But I can see people skipping a Gwenpool or something. Maybe that's not going to be as appealing. But if you're getting another round of these new pink cards to expand that even further, that's awesome. I doubt we'll see them in any other capacity, but I don't know that for sure. Who knows what they're going to do with these. But it's amazing that they did it, and it just shows that they are pushing the game forward. There is definitely criticism out there that the game doesn't do much that's new. We get cool heroes that have different powers, and we have different ways to thwart and different ways to attack and different ways to defeat the villain, but that's still what the game is. That's just what you're doing. You're thwarting, attacking, defeating the villain, and people want more variety. And I think having these just shows that they are not afraid to go all out and try some new things. I talked a lot about Tony's design in the recent video I put out about the game not being dead. And I did mention in that video that I was sad that Deadpool wasn't out yet because I would have loved to have talked about him there. But it just supports my thesis even more that Tony's designs are just out of this world. He is not afraid to try crazy things, and he brings such a fresh idea to the game, not taking anything away from Caleb and Boggs. They are fantastic, but Tony is he's just a little bit different. And I think that gives us a lot of excitement for what's going to come down the road. And this just would have slotted right into that video perfectly. Like, look at the other crazy thing. This next cycle is really shaping up to be the best cycle. All of the heroes look phenomenal. And lots of people have already played Next Evolution, whether you were at Gen Con and got to play the first scenario, or, people are getting the box at their local game stores because they shipped out early, and so people are playing them. And I've only heard good things about the campaign, about the scenarios. So I think we can confidently assume Next Evolution is going to be amazing, and all the heroes are looking great. So it's all good things. So I know this ended up being a little bit longer. There was a lot to talk about here, but I want to thank you so much for joining me. I'm just blown away. I just continue to be so impressed. And if I sound like a shill, I don't know what to say. I can only be honest, and my honest opinion is everything is awesome here. So thank you for joining me, and I appreciate your time. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you would like to. And I really look forward to seeing you next time we get up in game. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.